Liberal member of the House of Assembly, serving the folks of Virginia Waters, Cathy Bennett. Good morning, Ms. Bennett. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you today?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
Good. Wanted to call in about the conversation that is happening in the public around the provincial 911 service.
Mm-hmm.
And, certainly, let me be clear, the provincial 911 is important and long overdue service. This service was something that the Conservative government promised in the last election, and quite frankly, I think they're rushing to implement it in the dying days of a mandate. But the issue around the regional fire department and the services that are provided in the city, in the city of St. John's and on the Northeast Avalon, there's a couple things that I want to clarify, and I'm sure your listening audience, many of them are aware of this. The regional fire department supports communities, some communities throughout the Northeast Avalon, and the taxpayers in those areas have paid and continue to pay services to support that through their municipal taxes. And the services that are in place are currently, considered to be a Class 1 service. Some of the best services, top ratings that you can get in Canada. And, the value of that asset to the taxpayers, the value of the equipment, the value of the hardware, the software, the skills training that have gone into the staff that work in that service area, according to my sources with the City Council, as well as conversations I've had with the Regional Firefighters Association, that asset is valued to the taxpayers at about $2 million. And my concern with Minister Manning's approach is, when we debated provincial 911 implementation last year as part of the debate in the House of Assembly, we asked many questions around the provinces and the government's ability to implement this service and the execution issues. Eddie Joyce has been out talking, and my colleague has been talking frequently about challenges throughout the province, whether it's challenges with how the implementation is going to happen on the West Coast, issues that ambulance operators have in central Newfoundland, and issues that cell phone users who drive the Burgeo Highway have with the provincial 911 service. My concern is this is a situation where there's an existing piece of taxpayers' infrastructure.
Yep.
And Minister Manning, I believe, has an obligation to sit and negotiate and form a partnership and create a partnership so that value asset doesn't get discounted for the taxpayers who've paid it. Patty, you said it 100 times. There is only one taxpayer.
There is only one. Cathy, let me ask you.
Municipal and provincial governments have to work to find out solutions to problems like this.
Now, I can't possibly have you put the shoe on the other foot to speak to some of the government's position on this, but some of it sounds realistic. I mean, if you were in charge of rolling this out and your portfolio was responsible for expanded 911 service, it doesn't seem like it's a legitimate play to have exceptions made for carving out operational budget control and authority, does it? I mean, there's something about that doesn't sound right to me either. It's too bad it's a stumbling block in this negotiation between the province and the city, but there's something wrong with that, isn't there?
When you go back to when we debated it in the House of Assembly, and we have, two-tiered system of 911, no 911 in many parts of the province, and a 911 service that, taxpayers in communities on the Northeast Avalon are paying, the integration of those services and how that happens is an absolutely critical piece to work through. And we challenged, Minister Kent, who spoke to this in the House last year, and I continue to challenge Ms. Manning on how that it's not good enough to stand up in the House of Assembly and say we're going to do something if you don't have a plan to integrate it and have solutions that are based in partnerships and that are leveraging every single taxpayer's dollar. We can't afford to be duplicating spending on any level of provincial, municipal, federal. We can't afford to duplicate money. Taxpayers have a heavy burden. The province right now, the provincial finances are in a mess, and yet we have a minister who isn't willing to figure out a solution. Patty, there's lots and lots of ways that you can create joint venture partnerships. You can look at all kinds of negotiated terms and deals that allow for the proper integration of these services to service the provincial good.
Yeah, but you can't go halfway.
I just think that it's a narrow view that Minister Manning and this government is having, and I would, you know what, I'd challenge the Premier to get involved. I think it's time for him to show some leadership on this issue and get involved and ensure that the taxpayers who have been paying for a service on the Northeast Avalon and several municipalities aren't left standing without having paid for something twice.
And we're going to pay more now that we're going to expand province-wide, which I'm happy to do as a citizen of the province. I'm happy to play my role in ensuring 911 is available to every nook and cranny. But can you actually go halfway, Cathy? I understand the concept of creating these partnerships and finding a way to make it work, but when it comes to control of the budget, can we really legitimately carve out different pockets of authority for expanding operationally? Given the fact that we are talking about next generation 911, there is going to be have to be a province-wide attention to that, whether it be through software, hardware, computers, training, and otherwise. How can you really carve out an operational niche for the city of St. John's and not Corner Brook and not the northern, or I guess it's only Corner Brook and Central and St. John's will have these big dispatch centers. So how can you give one a different set of circumstances than the other? Isn't continuity going to play a really important role in trying to make sure we do this all on schedule, even though they missed their deadline, and to do it all at the same time, all the right way? Isn't that important?
There's many examples, Patty, where municipal, provincial, and federal governments work together to create agreements, to create partnerships, so that services that the public need can be delivered. And to say that in this particular case, when provincial 911 is so important and so long overdue, that the current government would say that we're going to spend new money to do something that is already existing without finding a compromise, to me, is just being irreverent to taxpayers' money. At the end of the day, we all agree at how important the service is to the people of the entire province.
It is.
But we have to make sure that the money that is being spent at whatever taxpayers level is being spent in the right way. And there are lots and lots of examples in other cases where partnerships have been formed, negotiations have been held, and there's a common platform, a governance model that's set up so that you can enable the service to be provided in the most cost-effective way. And quite frankly, I think that's a responsibility of government to show leadership, and that's why I'd call the Premier to get involved.
Well, something's going to have to give, because we're already almost, we're virtually 2 months outside the deadline now. Now we have a huge hiccup with the biggest city in the province, and their dispatch will provide services to about half of the population. So it's time for someone to figure this out, because it's about time this got settled. I do appreciate your input and your perspective on this. Anything else quickly, Ms. Bennett, before I go to the break?
Thank you, Patty. Appreciate the time this morning.
Appreciate yours.
Bye-bye.